Hello and welcome to UC Today. I'm Senior Editor Tom Wright, and in this video we're going to be talking about the challenges of migrating voice to Microsoft Teams. And I'd like to quickly start by asking our panelists to introduce themselves. So Kevin, perhaps we'll start with you.
Yes, well, it's good to be here. My name is Kevin Kieller. I'm the co-founder of EnableUC, and my team and I really help organizations get the most out of the Microsoft ecosystem. Much of that work revolves around helping them use Microsoft Teams effectively.
Thanks, Kevin, and I'll go next. Hi, it's Tim Jalland. I work as a solution manager for VOSS Solutions, and I work globally with our partners and our customers with regard to solution designs as they're deploying in their networks. If I just plug VOSS a little for a minute, our remit really is working with our customers and partners to help them build, operate and run UC voice and collaboration networks. And I'm hoping we can share some of the feedback off some of those projects with our audience today.
Yep, sounds good. And Kevin, I think a good place to start would be to set the scene. We've all seen the amazing growth of Microsoft Teams over the past couple of years. There's always something new coming out, something new going on. So tell us where we are in the market right now.
Yeah, that is a good place to start. Microsoft has reported there's 270 million monthly active users of Teams. They reported that a little while ago, so maybe there's a few more now. Of those, 80 million users use some form, are phone users, so they make calls with Teams, but a whole bunch of those calls are, voice over IP calls, so they don't involve the PSTN. And really, when you look at it, a small percentage of this 270 million monthly active users is really using Teams right now as their primary voice system, meaning having connected it to the PSTN, the public switch telephone network, to both place and receive calls. And I think, one of the reasons is while it's really easy to add PSTN calling to Teams, and Microsoft likes to demo it, and, in a minute or two you can do that. That's easy, in kind of a green field, but the real world is a lot messier and migrating. So especially, as in larger organizations, to go from where they are, to Teams, that's a lot more complicated. And so I think we're seeing organizations want to do that. There's some incredible benefits, especially for hybrid work, to add voice to Teams. But it's not as easy as, the demo would have you believe.
Yeah, and as you said, it's quite complex, and businesses actually have quite a few choices now in how to go about plugging voice into Teams, and different ways of that will be better for different businesses. So try and talk us through some of the problems they might encounter and how they can go around starting with that right choice.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. There's an increasing number of choices in terms of whether to use Microsoft calling plans or direct routing as a service, which has been, probably definitely the most popular, 70-80% of organizations using that. And now there's, new Operator Connect, which is another option. But I think one of the key problems with migration that people perhaps underestimate until they start is really having the organization do the discovery, figure out, what is their current voice environment look like? Who's using what? The different call queues, boss admin, a lot of organizations that have built legacy telephony have all these distributed systems. And as organizations get larger, they're often from different vendors. They've been in place, for tens of years, and they've changed. And so really figuring out your starting place, that's one of the most complicated things. And I know, Tim, you and I, we were talking about some real world examples that VOSS has encountered in terms of doing that discovery. Maybe you could share that with the audience.
I can do, Kevin. Yeah, let me just talk a little around the customer we were talking about. So this is a multinational insurance company, global reach. They've got a lot of users on their existing telephony platform. cross regions, cross countries, and they're starting on this phased migration. But the question is just where are they starting from and what services and features and all that stuff. Just what is that and how do I phase and migrate and plan for that onto Teams? So what we did in this case was we put some VOSS tooling in there. We've got some quite nice tooling, and it automates all the capture of the existing configuration and setup out of that existing telephony platform, runs an analysis on that, and they really use that then to really drive their planning and budgeting process. And it helped them rationalize their costs. They knew exactly what they wanted to migrate across, but it also helped them understand what they could leave behind, what wasn't in use, what was legacy and sort of could be retired. So they went through that process, planning and budgeting. Quite interestingly, they also pulled that into a set of nice graphs and reporting for the stakeholder side of their business. And they really ran their migration project and the phasing of that. So we put new cut of data every time we ran through a phase. And the outcome was very accurate, timely migrations, and with not a lot of post-migration support issues, which is what a lot of organizations often run into. Really valuable part of the process that was to do the discovery with them really at the start of each phase of their migration.
Yeah, because I think the thing is if you can automate that discovery, that, to your point, Tom, that means you've got the data to make the right choice in terms of like what is the right mechanism from a financial or capabilities perspective as you try to figure out, okay, how are we going to add voice to Teams? So, and without automating it, it ends up being, in the past we've put together, I don't know, the 15, 20 page questionnaire that you send out to somebody at the remote to answer these questions. And so if you can, use a tool to be able to automate that definitely speeds the process. And that's one of the important things is just how long are you going to live in this interim state?
Yeah, and as you both said, the discovery is often incredibly important, but it's easy to have these conversations and talk about the beginning, the choice, and the end, where they want to get to, and not talk about that really important part in the middle, which is the actual migration. So, Kevin, could you talk us through some of the obstacles that businesses might face on the actual migration and how they can best prepare themselves for as little disruption as possible?
Yeah, that's a good, and I talked about not wanting to spend a lot of time in that interim state. And if you think about it, in a lot of organizations, as you rightly point out, Tom, they, of course, think about where they are. And of course, then they make a pitch to where they want to go. And the thing is there's going to be this day when you're in the midpoint. And if you think about a larger organization, that means you have 50% of the people on the old system and 50% of the people on the new system. And that could be thousands of people on both, or even in some of these multinational cases that we work with, tens of thousands of people. And on that day, somebody, has to support both systems. There's probably people that are being onboarded and offboarded on both systems because, with different scenarios like boss admin and call control, like offices that are on the old system, when new people join that office, you have to put them on the new system. So, giving consideration to this midpoint, to, how are you going to scale up the teams and your tooling on this most complicated day when you're at this 50-50 is critically important because, what I like to say is like, if you don't get past the midpoint, you don't get to the end, right? You made the business case based on getting to the end, but you got to go through this, this very challenging day. Sometimes I have a slide that has two fish bowls and the fish between the bowls. And, that's the fish isn't really too happy, right? So I know that, one of the ways to do it is to use automation, right? Because to do it manual just means you're living this half, wave interim state for longer than probably the organization wants. Because let's face it, no large organization can do some flash cut. This isn't going to be an overnight or over weekend thing. So, Tim, I know we wanted to, have real world examples. So once again, maybe over to you to talk about some real world examples how the tools can kind of speed you through this period.
Let's talk about that, and I'll maybe talk a little about best practice on this topic. We've been in organisations, and they're at this midpoint. You're fully committed. You've got services on both platforms, and you're trying to navigate through that. And we've seen come into organisations with projects, and they've had a lot of this running on large spreadsheets, and we are talking a lot of data. If you think of a reasonable user population and that existing voice configuration sort of running on both sides, it gets complex. It's a big spreadsheet if it's inside there, and you're typically using highly skilled, technical people to try and keep a grip around this. So, in terms of best practice, what we'd suggest and what we put in the projects when we're running migration projects like this is we put tooling in, and the goal really is to provide an intuitive view where you can look across the users and the services and the configuration across the whole estate, and that's including both services where you're coming from and where you're going to on the Microsoft Teams side from quite a nice view, and you can take that out into business as usual with your service desk and where they're managing onboarding and offboarding and the like, and you can take that out into your stakeholder reporting. So that's what we put in. It's all about one view, making it intuitive and keeping a good handle with a foot in both camps so you can manage those services live as you're going through this midpoint and through this transition. And just in terms of some outcomes on that might be interesting to share. It keeps a good control around the whole project. Typically we'd look to take 50% out of the runtime on a migration project, with a good control panel around this. And that control panel and that view in there, it also keeps an accuracy on the project. So again, you get a lot less post-migration support issues on here, as people migrate across to the new platform. The niggles and the issues, it's really cut down, and that really drives user experience, and just a good adoption on the other side. So our saying on this best practices, you're only as good as your control panel on these migrations, and that's what we really recommend, on any size, reasonable size migration going through this midpoint.
Okay, and let's finish by talking about that end point, that end goal, and hopefully everyone watching listens to your answers in the last question and has a relatively stress-free migration. But what's the real value they get of completing that migration and getting their voice into Teams?
Yeah, and the things we talked about, it's not meant to kind of scare people away from doing this, because I think, one of these key benefits, especially as we look at this hybrid work, like adding voice to Teams, which you're probably, if you're listening to this, you're already using for collaboration, it really helps, enable hybrid work, because now your voice system, whether you're remote or traveling or in the office, from a user experience perspective, the voice system you only learn it once, as opposed to you go into an office and you have a different voice system. So definitely user experience benefits specifically for hybrid work scenarios. But also, some real opportunities for cost savings, right? Because, you're consolidating cost savings from, just the administration overhead goes down because you have a single system and it's consolidated. So definitely there. Simplification, yes, from the user experience perspective, but also from, the IT admin perspective. You have, a single pane of glass, and you may, some organizations, they may, for some reason, decide certain clusters of users may stay on a different system other than Teams. And that's okay, as long as, you get to, it could be 100% migrated. For some organizations, that makes sense, but not for all. Or it could be, you got 90% on Teams voice and maybe 10% or some other, percentage. So, you have a simplification as long as you have that single view. Definitely an increase of productivity, because, users basically work the same way. So, we've seen measurable increase in business outcomes once they know how to use, all the capacity of Teams. It's well integrated, and so they can stay in the flow of work more. And, I think that analytics piece is really important, because I'm a super fan of analytics. And, moving to the Microsoft platform, Microsoft has always done a really good job around the analytics. So if you have tools that can kind of pull that out of the Office graph, you get these behavioral and some sentiment analysis analytics. And you can really use that as a compass to say, hey, are we going in the right direction? And also as a ruler to say, okay, is this working? And, in areas where it's not, it really gives the IT admins, the IT pros, the IT leadership, this compass and ruler to be able to figure out and refine, the overall platform. So some great benefits. Pick the right tools to get there, but definitely when you get there, some real world, benefits for sure. Now, Tim, are there some specific customer use cases you want to call out in that regard?
Let me just finish up on a couple of topics. So as you say, Kevin, organisation, moving to cloud teams, news service, getting benefits out of that. And I think on the projects we've worked on, that get a good migration and get users across there, the feedback's really positive. They really enjoy the out of the office, back in the office, same tool set type experience. But the problem sort of moves a little back into the IT organisation, and again, it can be a simpler, better experience in that environment as well. But they need a tool, the better tool set for that, and that's really where we focus post migration, really trying to get the service management around these networks into business as usual, so you can drive these through your normal business processes and off the service desk. Simple, straightforward, take some cost out. It is around simplification and automation, and that's where we focus. The actual management of Microsoft Teams, once you get into the detail on that, some of you can do that through the Teams admin console or portal, but a good proportion of that sort of runs back into some of the more complex PowerShell scripting and things like that. So what we aim to do and where we work with customers post-migration is around really taking that complexity out and putting that into intuitive workflows that they can then trigger and initiate off the service desk. So it's just a simpler, better administration experience for them. And once they've got through that first step, we then look to work with them so they can delegate that out around the departmental heads and managers around their organisation. So there's a level of self-service there, close to where users and where the need is. And over time, they start to build that into their service catalogue, so it becomes part of their business processes. It's simple, quick, straightforward. Simplifies the administration, and at the same time, just helps them run a good service out for their user base. So that's where we focus post migration. It's around that simplification and automation of the service management of the estate as a whole.
Okay, well, I think that's a really nice place to leave things. It's been great talking to you both, and really interesting to talk about that actual migration as well. So thank you both for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and a share on social media, and we'll see you next time.